We are live.
All righty. So here we go. Nice. Thank you so much, Engineer Meg, for getting us on the live screen. Choo choo. Here we are streaming from the Nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam. And let's see here. I see that you pinned us both. I'm not quite sure if we are both on the screen. Here we go.
The speaker mute.
Right on. So today we're here from streaming from the Nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam, which has been running for almost 1 year solid. We have some glitches here and there, as to be expected, and we are rolling with the you know, with what comes at us, and we just keep going. It's just like making art, right? You just you never know what's coming up ahead, and you try your best to plan and go with the flow, right? So it's awesome when it works out, when technology works out, when we can also connect with each other, even though we're all scattered all over the world. We have crew here that really is like, I mean, all over this planet. We have India in the house, we have Denmark, we have Canada, the US. Where are we all from? We're star seeds, really, is what it comes down to, I think. And we're scattered all over the place, but we're gathering here as a place to connect, as a place to get creative together, to support each other, to build community. And it's a really powerful, it's been a really powerful experiment. Peru also here, awesome. And yeah, so today I'm going to be hosting a little conversation and interview and holding space here to share and chat with Oliver Bensen, who is an incredible artist that I've known of his work for many years, and have not had a chance really to chat with him before. So being, you know, having the train as a platform that we can jump on and connect and share, I figured this would be a good opportunity. And it was through Liba, who hosted an exhibition through Dreams and Divinities. It was the Spirit Fest last year in the UK that we all gathered and had a show online. And then also it was the Love Show that was in November that really brought us together. And through one of our live sessions where we came together, I put it out there asking if any of the artists there would be interested in jumping on the train and doing an interview. And Oliver and I have been connecting since then, and we're finally here to look at some art and to hear some stories. And you know, Oliver, I'm glad it's finally worked out, and I'm excited to, yeah, here we are.
Well, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a really neat thing that you've built here, and I'm just happy to join, and happy to have the chance to talk with you. Also, I was thinking about it and realized that I must have heard about you a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. I remember a website, an early website, and I can't even remember how I found it. But I've seen your work for a long time. But again, it's fun to have a chance to sort of meet and talk for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time. Yeah, it's so cool. I'm glad that the opportunity is finally upon us, and here we are. So let's jump into it, because I have to say, like, I have known visually your work for so many years as well. It's probably been that long, and I imagine it goes back to like early days in MySpace. You know, it's like, this is where we started connecting the international tribe. Maybe it was Beanart. Were you on?
No, I don't. I was aware of it. You know, I was kind of a late comer. I didn't have a computer until 2001, I think, and it's the same time I first connected to the internet. So I think there was stuff going on like well before that, but that was my first kind of connection to people internationally and sort of seeing everything that was out there. But I do remember Fine Art. I was never participated in it though.
Okay.
But I think I must have seen, they had a website back then, and sort of were showing a lot of stuff, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm embarrassed 'cause I didn't know.
I think my first website went up in like 2000, 2001. And
Yeah.
I started really connecting to the online community around that time as well. And it blew my mind to really start to see artists and find artists that were scattered all over the world that I felt also more connected to. And I know that has continued to accelerate because of the internet. Because you can find, what are the ways that you find other artists that you like? It's either through art school or workshops, galleries, going to different shows. But the internet has afforded us this connection without having to be physically in the same place. And this tribe really is like all over the world. And our work, like everybody that gets on the train, like we're all uniquely different in our styles, in our approaches too, but there's something that connects us all, right? Just like a train. And so it's really interesting how, to talk about what that is and to explore that, and to see that, it can be something that's even not very tangible, right? And I feel like I'm really curious about that in your work, like what your really core, where does the inspiration come from? And what is your goal? What is your mission that you feel so called to do your work? And maybe this is something that we can get into after we really look at it. So maybe.
Yeah, that might be easier. It's sort of like as soon as you asked that, I thought, okay, like if I try to answer that, it won't go well. But if we just talk, it'll come out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's have a look at some of your works, so
Okay.
we can, because an image is more powerful than words in many ways.
Yep.
And that image will inform us, and then afterwards we can have a little conversation.
Great. Well, I started kind of when I put the slides together, I kind of it's a little bit historical. Like I'm starting with one of the first things I remember making, and it's funny. I saw it pop up on the screen when we were just practicing, and I realized I hadn't looked at it in years. I made it as a teenager, and it was kind of it's just a thoughtless thing I did, and but it had a big sort of lasting effect, and set a path for me, maybe a little bit. Is a way to put that. So that's where we'll start, I guess.
Yes, let's do it. Looking forward to it. I just actually also, as you're pulling this up, I'll share just I just found a whole bunch of my high school art in a portfolio and have
Great.
brought it back with me. So yay, here we go. So yeah.
Well, it's not a great photo also, but this was, I grew up in an old house that had paint peeling on the ceiling of my room. And there were layers of paint that were all peeling. So there were these sort of patterns that I would stare at when I was going to bed at night. And one night I was looking at it and it started to turn into faces. And I got so fascinated with it that I started making a drawing. And this is, I was probably, I don't know, 16 or something. And I just made this drawing and like very quickly, trying to depict what I was seeing, which was a sort of, like a cloud filled with faces or something. It was sort of just staring back. So I made this, and then it sort of led to some other pictures, which were also trying to recapture that sort of odd moment. So this would be, I think I did this one in 1988. That other one was probably 86. And then it led to later on like an early painting where I tried to combine that face motif with some other ideas that I was working on. And then it led to, this is a detail of that picture. When I was first starting to do oil painting. This is from a little later on. This is from around 1999, I think. Working with the same motif, but in a different way. And then this is much more recent. It's a sketch that I made after making a drawing, which is the next picture. I could actually zoom in on that a little bit. Sort of, patterns and abstract patterns that kind of join with, I don't know, biomorphic patterns, I guess maybe would be the way to put that. Like a Rorschach test kind of thing. In the case of this drawing, I just started with, it was made with a technical pen. And I just started making abstract patterns, crosses and circles and so forth. And then the image developed out of that. And this is another recent sketch. It's not a finished piece, but something that's based on the same idea. And then another one from, I think 2014, which is larger. This is quite large. I think the face here in the middle is kind of it's about life size, but the big face is very large. It's maybe like this. This is another early oil painting. So I'm kind of just moving on to other sort of ideas that I was working with when I was first starting to paint. This started very early, but I didn't finish it until 2010. I've done a lot of work that way where I work on something and then leave it alone for years and then start up again. And then this is a very early painting from 1988 that I worked on. It's an egg tempera painting that I ended up burning because I got so frustrated with it. So I was trying to figure out how to, I taught myself really how to paint. So I had to make a lot of mistakes, and I made a bunch of mistakes on this painting. And in fact, so many that there was nothing left but mistakes. So I I got rid of it, and but I started a couple of years ago. I started to remake it. So this is first sort of stage of the remaking, and which I really just completed in the fall of this year. And this is another early painting with a similar theme, which I also ended up destroying because I got frustrated trying to figure out how to paint well, trying to realize an image that I could see very clearly, but didn't quite have the skill to realize. I've started to remake this painting as well, just in the last couple of years. So I have a sort of grisaille at this stage, but that's all. And you know, if you have anything you want to say, or jump in anytime if you like.
I just wanted to say, I think it's amazing how you're revisiting these works, you know, coming back to them and again.
Well, it's been a real it's something I don't know, maybe 4 years ago I started to really think about, like partly because I made so many things. I had a very I destroyed a lot of work after starting things, you know, after a few years, because I was just teaching myself how to paint, and I just had so many problems learning that I would end up ruining things. But I would save photographs of them, or I'd remember them, and then, you know, now I have more experience, so I can make a painting much more easily. And I like some of the ideas I had way back when. But so anyway, I've been doing that quite a bit, and you'll see a lot of that in the slideshow. This is another early painting that it's a terrible photograph, but, you know, it was a kind of an small egg tempera piece that I later turned into an oil painting, which is this. And actually, let me see. Let me put that away if I can. Okay. Is that bar showing up?
The one at the top, the
No.
October 3rd?
No, the Zoom bar. It's not in the way, is it?
No, we don't see it.
Good. So yeah, that painting, I still kind of liked the idea from that, so I ended up making another version of it a few years ago, which is this one. You can see the similarity is pretty obvious, but a very different technique. This is all acrylic. I focused mostly on oil early on, but in recent years, for a number of reasons, I'm just painting in acrylic. Once the very fine, thin acrylics were available, that are kind of like egg tempera, I started using that exclusively because I can pretty much do anything I want with them, which wasn't really the case before.
What kind of acrylics are you using?
Mostly they're called High Flow. It's a golden product.
Yeah.
Like it's very similar to egg tempera. I wouldn't know what else to compare it to. It's very thin, but also richly pigmented. And it's, you know, you can mix it easily with water and get a lot of variation in the you know, transparency or opacity. Yeah. And it of course dries instantly. So it's kind of wonderful to work with. You know, I haven't had a studio in years, so I have to put work away at the end of the day. And it's much easier when it's acrylic. You know, you can just sort of stow it and not worry about it, which of course with oil is just, you know, it gets a little more difficult. But this is another oil painting that also I ended up destroying from the, I don't know, 91, I think, or so, but I've remade it recently. Oh, this is a version I'm working on now in tempera. And And this is a sort of another variation on it that I did some years ago for a show that Liba put together, actually. And this is another early painting, which I also destroyed. I'd only have this photograph of it. It was actually a full figure with a scene behind it and a big dragon. It was about 6 feet tall. But I ran into a lot of problems and ended up destroying it. But I kept some sections of it. This was one part that was left over. And then I worked on it more and ended up with this, which is the final version of it. And let's see, this was another part of that painting that I cut off and made into a different painting. Sometimes I did that with paintings too. If I got really frustrated or had some problem, I would just cut it up into pieces and make other paintings out of it. That's from a period of, I actually forgot to take those out. I decided I wouldn't talk about my year or about 6 months in Los Angeles where I just could not paint during the day, and I would stay up all night, and I made horrible, messy paintings. Tons of them, like hundreds. But I forgot. I wasn't gonna have those in there. I forgot to take them out. So let's just move on.
I think it's perfect that they're part
This is
of
another.
this right now.
It's well, maybe I should have put some more in. I mean, there's so many of them, and they're very different. You know, it's just sloppy oil paintings that were all painted usually in just one session, like sometimes an hour or half an hour or something. And they're all pretty crazy. This is something I did after moving to the Midwest, just a kind of sketch, which I then wanted to turn into some other paintings, and I made this version of it. And then I made another version of it. This is a detail. And then, so another version of it. And this is something from the same period. When I was just first starting to, this is maybe the first painting that I used just acrylics. The sort of liquid kind that I was talking about. This is another one from about a year later, but based on a really early drawing that I made, which, and now I don't know where it is. I gave it to a friend, and then he lost it, or he gave it away and he doesn't remember where it went. So I don't have a picture of it, but this is, similar. It's based on it. And another sort of painting, early experiment with these kind of acrylics from pretty recently. I think 2016 or 17, I made this. And go ahead.
Are you using airbrush by chance, or how do you create such smooth transitions?
I just, layers basically. Yeah. Like, I thin the paint, and I mix the colors pretty carefully, and maybe very carefully, and end up with a pretty, it's that kind of acrylic I found I can really get a very fine, both a glaze and a blending by layers that is, kind of approximates oil. But no, I don't use an airbrush. I don't object. I can't stand the sound. Like, I can't stand the sound. So this was the painting that was, the other one was kind of based on the previous painting. This is recent. This was from the, I don't know, late 90s I made this. This is also a very early, I think from 92, it was a watercolor painting that I started and then gave to a friend. And just a couple of years ago, she got, I hadn't talked to her in 25 years or something, and she got back in touch and sent it to me, and I finished it. I worked on it more. So this is, I think, that's the finished version. But you can see. This is another early, I think from 1990. a painting that I ended up cutting up, and I burned most of it, but I kept one part of it, which I turned into this. And then a few years ago, decided to remake the painting as a, it's a little, hold on. I think I need to shrink that a little bit, right? Well, I can't. So that might be a little cut off on the screen, I'm sorry.
You're muted, Amanda.
Yeah.
Incredible piece. The questions are just bubbling up for me, and I'm going to wait to ask more afterwards. But this is so fascinating to see your process in
Good.
revisiting. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was a good idea to do, but that's what I ended up doing. I've got a bunch of things, and I don't know, feel free to stop me with questions, because I might make this go on too long, because I've got still a lot of stuff here. So please just stop me if you feel like it.
Okay, well, we got time. So let's just keep going forward. I mean, I'm one thing though that I'm going to ask the question now. I'm so curious around this impulse to destroy work, and then to revisit it again. And that's something that's already come up multiple times in your presentation. I find that fascinating.
Well, I don't, it's not something I really do anymore. It's just, and I can't say I exactly understand why, but it's something that was really a big part of my start. I destroyed most of what I made as a teenager. It's like almost all of it's gone. And then, I started making paintings, and I guess I got very serious about art when I was about 19, and really dove in. But for probably 5 years, I was destroying almost everything I made, because I was just so, the process I found so frustrating. I had an idea about what I wanted to do as an artist, but I couldn't find a teacher. I wasn't, I'd seen examples like of the artists in Austria that I really liked. But I think I was maybe I was just at an age where the New York school and the conceptual art and the movements in the 80s were all sort of so dominant that I really was on the outside in some way. Like I didn't know how to proceed. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't really know what I was doing also. So it was all experimentation, and most of my experiments failed. So I would end up destroying them or, trying to remake them, or cutting them up. Like I said, I had to learn to stop doing that, because I think I lost a lot of good work. And, there are many paintings that I made that I have no record of, and, I can't even remember what they looked like, and it would be nice if I could. But, now it's sort of like coming around, and I'm kind of, what was missing at the beginning I now have, and I can sort of carry the projects forward to completion. It just took a lot of years to get there.
Also, where your inspiration and your ideas are coming from. Have you traveled a lot? This is a question that Marnie is asking in the chat. Have you studied Eastern spirituality, and are psychedelics an influence?
Well, not psychedelics, but traveling, yes. I moved around a fair amount as a kid. My parents split up, and they both kind of like to move. So I was used to traveling around as a kid, and I went to India in my early 20s and spent months there, and to Southeast Asia also. And my parents actually traveled in India a fair amount too. So traveling there was a bit very important, but also, my father was an antique dealer and kind of a junk collector. So we had a lot of interesting stuff around, a lot of stuff from India and China. Old books, old sculptures, paintings, all kinds of stuff. And he had a lot of stories too. He traveled everywhere, like all over the world. And so, yeah, sort of exoticism or, sort of a global idea of art and culture was pretty important from the beginning for me. And it still is. Yeah, there's just, there's so much amazing culture and so many that I think that kind of answers it, right?
Yes, I also just wanted to note that Ernst Fuchs, he grew up in a like salvage antique environment.
That's
as
right.
well, and that's where a lot of his inspiration came from.
It totally makes sense. I met him. I met him once and talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and his art really meant a lot to me. Really, really special. And yeah, I can totally see the antique, connection there. And I think I remember reading about that in one of his books, and thinking like, oh, of course, I get it. Like, the same world, the same kind of growing up around that, it's very stimulating to your imagination, I think. Objects that have a story, a special quality. This is another painting that is a remake of an earlier one, which also I destroyed. But this is a fairly close remake of it. I'm probably going to end up working on this a little more, but it's recent. I think it was last touched in 2018, and it's also an acrylic painting. I think maybe I just said that though. I don't think I have there's a bit of a detail. Zoom in a little bit. This is slightly earlier painting. I finished it in 2010. This is one of the few survivors of my early days. I started it in 1990, I think. And so it took me 20 years. I finished it in 2011. And there are a bunch of other versions of this a little detail here. And this is another thing, also a survivor of my early years, which I finished in 2008, I think. I think I have some details of this one too. Another early painting that survived, finished also around 2011. In 2011, I decided I had to finish all my old paintings. So I took 6 weeks and worked mad hours and completed a bunch of things in a very short period of time that I've been working on for, 20 years already at that point. This is like the piece I mentioned where a friend sent me something. This was a friend of mine asked me to draw something on paint something on a piece of clothing for him. So I made this in probably 1990 or 89. And he sent me a photo of it, and I decided to remake it or make a painting out of it. And I ended up with this. Hard to see any relationship between them, but it's there. I used it as the basis for this, and then just worked up, and yeah, the final result. Here's another early drawing that I have recently turned into a painting that now, stage by stage, you'll see. And that's where it is now. And I'm also working on another version of it, which is still pretty early, in an early phase of development. This is another early picture that did not survive, but I painted over it. I didn't destroy it, I just painted over it. Once, twice. That's the finished version. But then I was missing all the other stuff I did, so I've started to repaint it based on the old snapshot that I had. And it's actually gone a little further since this stage. This is another sort of recent acrylic painting. There's a little detail of it. And I got kind of interested at one point in the Celtic art and the interlacing of figures. So I did a sort of series like that, I think in 2016. These are all very small. They're sort of postcard sized things. This is another very early painting that stage by stage I developed, changing it quite a bit till finally this. Also in 2011, that's when I finished it at the same time as the other group of paintings I was working on. This is another early piece, going through stages of development till finally it reached this state in 2008. Oh, that one I was going to take out, sorry. I have some other pictures missing from that one. But this is another early-ish painting that went through a few phases to get to this in 2011. And this is yet another early painting that I don't have a full photo of it, but it was a painting that I also ended up destroying. But this is what it developed into, and then I cut it apart and threw it away. I got very frustrated, but I've started to remake it in a couple of different versions. But they're both pretty early right now. This is just an early experiment with gum tempera, which I've only used once as a medium, but I enjoyed it. It was nice to work with. You know, mixing gum arabic and stand oil and dry pigment. Here's another early painting going through phases to reach its completed form, with the repeating face motif coming back. This, I think I finished this in 2011 also. And here's another very early painting that was a survivor. I just painted over it again and again to struggle toward this, which is the finished version. And looking back at some of the old photographs, I kind of thought, oh, I want to work with some of the ideas that were there at the beginning that I painted over. So, well, here's a detail of an unfinished phase. But this is another version of it that I've put together recently based on old photographs of the way that painting started. This is a surviving fragment of one of the paintings. I'll kind of zoom in maybe. This is a fairly good photograph, I think. Oh, maybe it isn't actually. But, you know, this is inspired by visiting Nepal in the early 90s. I had a very, I was there briefly, but seeing the Himalayas in person was just really an amazing experience. And ended up producing this painting as a result of it. Here's an odd one. Some point after traveling, I traveled in Europe in 2004, and I got very interested in flags. So I made a whole series of them. I think I have a couple things here. Yeah, this was from a dream about an Austrian flag. You can see the form of it there. And then another kind of flag image working in the face motif. And the flags and the abstract patterns led to doing some formal abstract pieces like this and this. But then that found its way into some figurative things as well that were kind of like abstraction, you know, a figurative thing with a large amount of abstraction or like formal abstraction kind of cooked into it. Obviously, this one's kind of like an architectural drawing, or what do they call this? A rise or something like that? Elevation, I think they call them. Yeah, here's another flag-related piece. Based also on this Sefer Yetzirah. Yeah, then the abstractions also led me to make some kind of chakra, this one and this, which is quite large and maybe hard to see. It's actually, if you see, there's an ocean, a circular ocean surrounding the piece. So it's kind of like a, you know, a fisheye lens if you were in the middle of the ocean and you saw it arrayed around you like this. And then there is this sort of chakra coming out from the moon that's at the top of the sky.
It's so prolific, Oliver. That piece, just that one you just showed, the chakra piece in the middle of the ocean. It just each one of these are so visceral in such a deep way, and to like, where does this come from? You know, like where is the? Do you start in the middle and radiate out? Do you make sketches? Do you do digital sketches? How does it? Where does it come from?
Well, this piece started actually as a kind of, it was originally a rectangular piece that was kind of like a, inspired by Islamic designs, patterns, you know. And it was a simple geometric thing at first, but as I worked on it more, it became three-dimensional. It wasn't just a color pattern, but, you know, it became three-dimensional. And, you know, well, that's just the technical part. I mean, you know, the feeling or idea behind it, you know, meditation, you know, spiritual experience, contemplation, all of that stuff has a role to play, you know, like the, you know, maybe this partly, there was a period of time where I did a lot of, not a lot, but I spent some time with a Sufi group doing a lot of zikr and chanting and so forth. And, you know, those practices are they really do something, you know, it's not just playing around. Like they open up, something deep inside a person. And I think, probably that has a lot to do with it, having some experience that then, you want to translate into a painting. This painting I worked on for probably 15 years because it was, that same kind of struggle, both trying to figure out how to paint, but also how to express something that I was experiencing, which is maybe not that easy to express, or not that direct, not that clear exactly how you would do that. I know in the case of this painting particularly, around the time I finished this, I met a Serbian icon painter, and I spent some time working on icons with him. And it really did something to my painting too. It changed the way I saw. That tradition is really something very profound in it. And I don't even mean necessarily spiritually, though. I think that's true. It's the I think the great painting that was done in the Hellenic era, where the Greeks first figured out how to depict space in a painting and light and shadow. That tradition was kept alive through the icon painters, and it's been it's what's behind European art. I think the amazing quality in the Renaissance art really comes out of that tradition, and it goes way back. I mean, it goes back 2,000 years. Anyway, I kind of got rambly there, but all of those things have a part in this painting, definitely.
It's really encouraging to hear how long you've spent on some of these works, and how much you've revisited them, and really taken the time to see also iterations is so encouraging, I think, to everyone here. Also knowing that,
great.
It's such a journey, and we're in a room of artists, right? That are all in this, like, every day we go through this struggle, right?
Yeah.
Of searching, of attaining that image that we are looking for, and we may not even know exactly what it looks like, right? But it's like this dance of discovery.
Yeah, I think that's well put. It's strange because it's sort of like I don't know, at least it seems to me like painting, if you're working with images, so you can't just sort of copy something that is in your mind. I mean, you can do that, but for me, it doesn't work. It's sort of like the image has to proceed from feelings, not just one feeling, but one feeling after another. Like, and each of those feelings adds something to the image and helps bring it to life. But it's a process. It's can take a very long time. For me, now it's not so much like this. I'm able to work much more to produce results a lot more quickly. But yeah, it's for a long time it was just years and years of sometimes I'd leave a painting alone for 5 years or something, because I just couldn't see how to go any further. And I knew if I forced it, I'd end up destroying it. So better to leave it alone. When the time's right, come back. I'll show a little more. This is another. This is an acrylic from around 2008, I think, where I got sort of interested in just pure color and making images out of pure color and shapes. This is, well, obviously there's no color here, but it's more of a geometrical experiment. I figured out that you could generate patterns like this using just a straight edge and a compass, and that they would they would sort of repeat infinitely, but in a radiating manner, not like a chessboard, but like from the center point outward. So, you know, I have here, I think 4 or 5 different elements, different shapes that would be extend infinitely using only those few shapes locking together in an outward pattern, in a pattern that is radial. There's probably a better way to explain that, but I don't know how. But this is maybe a simpler version of the same kind of geometrical idea, but based on 7s in this case. You have one circle surrounded by 7, surrounded by 14, surrounded by 21, 28, and so on, infinitely. But I stopped at 14 or 21. That was enough. It's another sort of sevenfold division. This is a one based on 5s, 1 to 5 to 10 to 15, and so on.
It does something to your eyes. Really does,
And,
looking at this.
Yeah, there's a kind of an optical. I think that I wondered about that, if maybe, you know, there's, you know, our eyes are made up of cells that are organized a certain way, and that organization is a pattern of some kind. So, you know, we maybe just by the, you know, just mechanically, we're going to respond to a pattern. Our eyes will respond to a pattern because it's sort of like the thing that is looking is a pattern-based organ, or, you know, an organ that has a formal pattern, you know, in its makeup. This, yeah, another acrylic. This one's kind of on the larger size. I think it's about 3 feet across. Unfinished still. I haven't done anything with this in some years. I was 11 to 2015. I was working on mostly on geometrical abstractions like this, but I've kind of gone away from that for the time being. So I still have some big projects like this that I haven't completed. This was probably the biggest of that group. Here's the finished form of it. This took a really crazy amount of work to complete, something like 1,000 hours. It's quite large, and took many, many layers to get the colors just right. And it's really was impossible to photograph. So it doesn't, you kind of have to see it in person to get the effect of the painting, but you can kind of see how it was done. I made another at the same time that was even larger. That's like a deconstructed American flag with 50 stars. Actually, this painting originally, I was driving across the country. I was somewhere in Kansas, and I got an image of a building in my mind with 13 steps and then a dome that was made of stars. I could just kind of see it in my mind, and started thinking about it and how a building like that would be constructed. And then when I tried to draw out a plan, I came up with this image, and then decided to make a painting out of it. So it's really an abstraction. It's not an architectural plan. Another of that group, also, this one's unfinished. and another grand project that is on hold for the moment. This is about, I think, 3 by 4 feet. And as you can see, it's an acrylic. It goes down in a lot of detail toward the center, spiraling. A 7-fold spiral pattern that I sort of conceived as a, crystal rainbow kind of, light as an object kind of construction. But a lot of time spent doing this, and it's not there yet, but it's coming along. And this is a painting from this fall that is actually on its way to Vienna right now. But is actually a newer version of an old painting, but I don't have a photo of the old painting. And kind of a related, these are just some sketches that are things that I've just started recently. So they're just, roughed out. So I'll kind of go through them quickly. That's from a very old sketch from, I think, 1989, but it's worked up into, more of a painting now. That's also very early, probably 1990. And then you can't really see the relationship, but it was the basis for this more recent painting that's still in a pretty early stage. And then we have, I think that's it. Yeah, that's all.
Woo! Wow! Wow. And I don't know if you've been immersed in speaking and sharing with us and showing these images. There's been, we've been sharing in the chat on the side as well, commenting, people are, everyone here is so mesmerized, amazed. I mean, that's kind of where I feel right now, looking at the body of work that you've created. And of course, I can imagine it's not everything,
No, there's a lot more. But wow, that's great. I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad that others did too. Yes, I see a bunch of chat signs here. Well, that's great. I mean, thank you for listening and for looking, and for your questions too, and comments.
Yeah, if you I can go back and share some of the questions that have come up, and if anybody has some questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. And yeah, it's so amazing to me to go back and to consider. I think you said in the beginning you did not have a formal education in art. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's true. I went to the Pennsylvania Academy for a semester in Philadelphia, and there were a couple of teachers there who I rather liked, but I just couldn't stand it. I felt like I was not going to really be able to learn what I wanted to learn there, and that I wouldn't be able to learn what I wanted anywhere. So I stopped going there, and I actually did take some lessons with a Tibetan painter right after that, for a couple of months. But then after that, I just sort of came away with the same feeling. I had something that I needed to do on my own. And looking back at that, I'm not sure it was really such a great idea, but it's what I did.
I think it was a really good idea in many ways, because you've created something so unique. And certainly, of course, we don't know what would have happened if you had stuck with the, with that school that you were in at the time, or going more with the influences that was around you. But I think this is a common story in for many artists as well, that it is a solo path. And you know, it's your dedication and your commitment to the revealing of the vision that is has carried you to now. And that struggle of having to figure it out very much on your own, you know, is a part of the path that led to this refinement. Because when I look at your work, it is so, like, one of the words that comes up to me is refinement. It's so delicate and like dedicated. There's such a commitment to it, and a clarity, like true clarity.
I should probably credit my uncle and my grandfather, who are, and my cousin also, are stone cutters. They're, you know, they all cut letters in stone, not, you know, in monuments and, you know, churches, museums, that kind of stuff. And the level of craftsmanship that was practiced, I kind of grew up around that. I didn't practice that myself, but I got to see it in action. And they were, my cousin is still doing this, and it is, his level of technical ability is almost frightening. It's just, you know, the mastery of a physical skill was kind of, you know, something that I just, you know, grew up seeing and respecting and sort of holding as an ideal. So I think that probably, you know, I imitated that and kind of, or, you know, yeah, I would say I imitated it. I think I, you know, maybe recognized that in some of the Austrian painters. Obviously, you know, Fuchs had that kind of skill, and Rudolf Hausner, I think, was an astounding painter. I met Fritz Janschke too, because he was in Philadelphia for years. I met him early on and got some, you know, experience talking about technical stuff and seeing some of his work. And, you know, I love museums too. And if you just spend enough time in museums, you'll see the level of craft that was practiced in earlier times. The abilities that artists had were amazing. I respect it a lot, and, you know.
Right. So Jeffrey asks a question in the chat: as you work on the poses in your pieces, do you look more to real life reference or to paintings?
Oh, well, ideally, ideally, most of the time I do neither. That is, I try to, you know, use my inner eye. But I think, you know, that was sort of something I was very focused on not looking at other things for a long time, like not looking at paintings or photographs or figures in life or anything, just producing it straight from imagination. But now I don't really have, I don't know how I would answer that accurately. I think it's kind of anything, you know. I can look at a photo, or I don't really use models, like live models. I don't have an objection to it. It's just something that hasn't really happened or worked out for me, so I don't really do it. But I don't know. Maybe that answers the question.
Mm. I mean, it's in many people also build models. Well, not many, but that's one of the approaches, right? To be able to observe also, well, where's the light falling? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Oh, I've always wanted to do that, and I kind of, it's something, it's like I've got to post it up there in my mind saying, you got to do this sometime, because it seems like a great idea, and I've seen examples of it. I know Nicolas Poussin did that, and you can really see it in his paintings. There's like a level of real in them that's very striking, you know.
Well, it's also something that I think that you achieve over time, you know, depending on you know, you observe reality, how, you know, how the light falls, and then you can also, based on that formula, you know, that you then can translate that, and your own sense making kind of reveals that. But it is something that, where do we look to when you're creating, because your work is so, it's of another dimension in many ways, right? So, you know, one of the things that Fuchs said to me when I was in my early 20s painting and helping him in the Apocalypse Chapel, and I asked him as I was about to start painting this drapery on the ceiling that was, you know, in the midst of all this, you know, so many different works that were had so many different light sources. I asked him, well, where should the light be coming from? And he looked up at me and he said, the light of God comes from everywhere, and left. And those were the kind of clues that I got from him.
It must have been wonderful to work with him and to work in that place.
It was challenging in so many ways, and I look back on it and wish I had you know, been ever more attentive, but I was as much as I could, and I took a lot of notes at the time, and I really, I got to meet a lot of great artists that came through, and that's how I was introduced in many ways to this movement, was through being able to meet the artists that came to meet him. And I'm surprised I didn't meet you at the time.
It could have easily happened. You know, he asked me when I met him, he said that he wanted to start working with artists, bringing in younger artists to help him. And that would have been in '92 that I met him. And I've regretted at times that I didn't pursue it. I went back to the US and got myself back to work, and I just couldn't really bring myself to go back to Europe and to get back in touch with him. And but if I had, we probably would have met over there, because I think that's what he was talking about, was that chapel. Yeah, wonderful guy.
I'm curious have you and Maura Holden met? Have you spent any time together?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Maura and I were very good friends. We were in Philadelphia at the same time. We met there, and first and probably in the late '80s, and then again, I know I saw her again after I came back from India. And we were in touch on and off over the years. I haven't talked to her in, I don't know, probably 4 years now, but over the course of my life, yeah, we've interacted quite a bit. We were quite close at one point, actually. Yeah.
There's something that I see in your work that reminds me of Maura, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one, but there's the poetic and something about the figures and the lines, and there's a kind of poetic that's very clearly different but also similar.
Yeah, I would. It doesn't surprise me, and if I looked, I would see it. If I looked long enough, I would see it. I mean, I admire her paintings and have for a really long time, and her sense of a sense of beauty that she's had for a very long time, and it's I think very it's it comes from something broad. She's she has a rich life aside from her painting that sort of I think adds a quality, things she's cultivated, other things she's cultivated. And poetic, maybe, is actually exactly the right word for it. Yeah.
Lila's son asks a question in the chat. She says, you mentioned early in your journey lacking technical ability and a teacher, and being frustrated for a long time. Was there a breaking point with this where things became easier, or some action that you took? Or maybe it was a long, gradual journey to the incredibleness of today?
Well, thanks for that last bit. I think it's maybe like building up a callus, it's sort of just over time, you keep doing something, you get better, and the frustration gets less painful and dramatic, and you learn how not to hurt yourself and not to destroy things if you don't need to. And Yeah, I think just over time, so I don't know if there was a breaking point. There were probably many breaking points. Things would open and close and open and close, but eventually, the the stream the stream flows better over time. Let's put it that way. That's been my experience.
You learn that the dance with that unknown is also it's a path, and it's not you don't get stuck in that void. I feel like that's one of my one of the things I've become more comfortable with, and I think that's what it is becoming more comfortable with the weird in between moments, where it doesn't quite look like what you want, but it's I've found that some of the most uncomfortable situations are the ones that lead me to some of the most incredible breakthroughs. And you have to, I think with time, you just remember then that it's not the end. It's not the end of the world. And to keep persevering and doing what you can do in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that makes a lot of sense to me.
Do you have a practice? You mentioned spending time with I think that was it the Sufis, or do you have any other practices that that help you tune in to the state of consciousness that you kind of like draw from for your work or to help that translation onto the canvas?
No, not particularly. I mean, I studied Qigong for a while too, and did some serious practice of that kind and some Tai Chi, and I liked it very much, but I don't have any particular thing that I do. No. The painting itself is kind of the practice for me, I think.
And this question I think came up earlier. Are you painting mostly on panel or on canvas?
Mostly on panel. Well, I paint on canvas too, but I like panels. And lately, especially, I've been using something called ACM. It's like an aluminum composite panel. It's beautiful. It's like glass. You know what I'm talking about. Doesn't take up a lot of space. So it's easy to store. It's easy to transport because we move around a fair amount. So that's what I've settled on for the moment. But, I actually have a big canvas I'm working on right now. So yeah, I do canvas too.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned a painting going to Vienna. Is this for a show with that Liba has helped organize, or is this a part of another show?
No, it is. It's part of that show. Yes. I'm sending 3 things over there. DHL finally showed up after a week and a half. And so I hopefully not too late, they're on their way.
Wonderful. And what else do you have on your horizon? What are you looking forward to? What are you, do you teach? That's another good question.
No, I don't. Right now I'm just, I'm working on a fairly big commission, and I think should have a couple more after that. And that's sort of occupying my mind pretty centrally. I have, I think something like 100 paintings in progress that are things that I just, sort of want to do. But for now, I'm kind of focusing on these commissions, and I'll bring some of those paintings back in when I have time. But I've got a big portrait that I'm doing that it's going to require a lot of labor. So that's where all my attention is right now. Yeah, another, a kind of a goal now is like getting a house and a studio. We've kind of been moving around and homeless now for a couple of years, and and it's getting a little tiring, and we're really starting to look seriously about settling down somewhere. And so a studio is kind of like a goal, and
Yes. Well, we'll all hold that in our prayers here on the Vision Train for your studio and that magical place for your creations to continue to unfold. And
well,
I really hope this is just the beginning of your hopefully presence on the train as well. And maybe we can continue the conversation and talk about more of the inspirations and go into more of a dialogue with everyone. And yeah, so let's plan another journey sometime.
Great. Okay. I'm all for it.
Okay, wonderful. So I think we'll stop the